First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us. That is a live shot at the Oregon coast right there, and it looks amazing. And I bet a lot of people are going to be heading out there this weekend for Labor Day weekend. As you can see, it's nice, but possibly dangerous, and that's what we're going to be talking about there. I jumped the gun just a little bit, but nonetheless, we are live streaming on our social media channels, our apps, and our website. And so one of the things that we have been covering here as a recurring series is talking about water safety here in Oregon. We've got a lot of lakes, we've got a lot of rivers, we've got the ocean, lots of places to go enjoy yourself, but also important to stay safe. And we're going to be discussing rip currents today. What is a rip current? If you don't have the definition of that, that's what we're going to be talking about, and that's why we have our guest. There he is, Charles Lose, who's joining us, the ocean coach. And Charles, thank you. You know, as always, it's great to have you on here, and I do learn something every time, and I feel like I should know some of this stuff, but you know, I don't, and I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat, and so that's why you're so valuable here to talk about this stuff. So for this weekend. It's not just this weekend, but obviously with a lot of people going out to the beach this weekend. Rip currents are what you wanted to bring up. So I wonder if we could just start off with just that definition of what that even means.
You know, people have heard of rip tides, they've heard of undertow, and they've heard of rip currents.
Undertow is what I've always heard.
Undertow doesn't exist. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. But they're often called rip tides. They have almost nothing to do with the tides. Rip currents is the right term for them. And they're pretty simple, Greg. What happens is the waves hit the beach and they pile up a little bit of water along the dry sand. They just kind of make a little mound of water. You can't see it, it's not very high, but that mound of water wants to run downhill. That's what water does. And so it goes along the beach till it finds a little bit of a low spot. And then it drains out through that low spot. And that's pretty much a rip current.
So that's really it. It's just that there's so much water pushing up against there that it actually forms. It actually goes higher than it was before, right there, and then finds something to run downhill. That's a terrible definition.
It's not a bulge you can see. It's a quarter inch. It doesn't really matter. But it's just water wants to run downhill. It will find its way, and it'll find a little low spot, and it'll flow out, and it'll cut a little channel, and you will have a current that indeed does pull swimmers out. That's the danger of it. But there's nothing keeping them down. What's that?
I said, I feel like we've all felt that if we're standing there sometimes. You feel that water pulling against you like that.
And it's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason people think about undertows, imagine you're standing in thigh-deep water in one of these rip currents, and there is a current pulling you out to sea. It tends to knock your legs out from under you, and you can go down. And boy, that feels like there's a current dragging you down. It's not happening. You can just set that aside, and you'll see undertow signs on the beach. Meaning county officials put up a sign that says dangerous undertow. Doesn't exist. Rip currents do, and they will pull you out to sea.
So what are people then? So people are just using the word undertow for rip current, or there just isn't anything called an undertow?
They're describing their terror, their reaction in terror when something is pulling them out to sea.
Gotcha.
So if you're ever caught in one of these things, just understand, the water's flowing downhill. There's no sinister force that's going to drag you down.
Gotcha. So it's more of a descriptive term somebody uses because they're scared of what's happening, but that's not actually what's going on. Okay, exactly. That's really good to know. Well, I know we've got some examples here too to walk through.
Yeah. Put up the green one.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a great illustration of a rip current. What they did is they dropped some green dye in the water, and for scale, the dots on the beach, those are people. So they put some green dye in the water over to the left, and you can see that marks the water. The water's flowing along the beach. Ooh, there it finds a channel. And you can see it heads right out through that channel where all that green dye is going. And that is a classic rip current right there.
Now, is there rhyme or reason to that? Is that always going to be in the same spot? I mean, how exactly does that part work?
You know, they change minute by minute. They can pop up and disappear in a few minutes. Sometimes they get pretty well established and they'll stay there for a few hours, but they're pretty ephemeral. They come and go.
Okay, so looking at it right there, with the green dye, that does make it easy to see. But naturally, we're not going to have that when you're at the coast. So.
Okay, but let's look at that. Take the green dye out of the picture with your brain. You will notice there's a gap in the waves right where that rip current is. That's very typical. You might also notice that the water is darker along the path of the rip current. That's because the water has carved a little channel and it's darker. So, of course, there won't be green dye when you get to the beach, but those markers will be there.
So you'll see that area where there's not any waves going on and it's darker right there because it's carving a channel, just to reiterate what you just said.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Why don't you go to the next slide? That illustrates it fairly well. Okay, so here you can see that dark channel going out from the beach.
Yeah. It's really
And
clear now that
yeah,
you mention it.
yes, and then you can also see there's a little gap in the waves. That is a classic rip current.
Okay. So yeah, obviously now that you're showing it, really easy to see, really easy to understand.
Greg, that is such a good point because once you know how to spot these things, you'll spot them all the time. And you'll go down to the beach and your eye will just immediately read the beach and you'll know what's safe and what's not. And, if your kids are splashing around in the water, you can look and you say, oh, no rip currents around, they're good. And you can go back to your novel. Or if they're getting close to one, you can kind of urge them to go left or right or whatever. So, but you're absolutely right. Once you know what to look for, they're pretty easy to spot.
So let's talk about what some of the dangers are of these. Now that you know how to spot them, you can see that. I mean, we felt that before. Obviously, we felt the water pulling against your feet. What are some of the things to be concerned with?
Well, they are pulling you offshore and they are stronger than you. You cannot swim against the rip current in general. And people will panic and they'll try to swim to shore and they get exhausted. And that's where people end up in real trouble. The fix is if you get caught in one of these things, is just take a deep breath. Okay, water's running downhill. I'm floating out to sea. Swim parallel to the beach.
Okay.
Don't swim toward the beach. Just swim sideways and swim out of the thing. If you swim 30 yards, you'll probably be out of it. And
Now,
then you can get
how
to the
wide are
beach.
these typically, or is there a typical amount?
Well, they can be big. Why don't you go to the next slide, if you would?
Hmm.
Okay, this one, that's just more of the same. This is what it looks like from the beach more. There you go. That's a big one. That's a pretty good size one. You can see that they can be big. On a really big surf day, they can go out. That's kind of a moderate size one. On a really big surf day, they can go out a quarter mile and they can be 100 yards wide, but that's unusual. Usually they're 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide, go out 100 feet or so. So you can see this is kind of a different brand right here. This is a different brand of rip current. If you go back to that slide, where the marker is not so much the deep channel, but it's a churned up sand. You see how the current has churned up the sand? That's another marker.
Hmm.
Sort of a different type of rip current.
So you mentioned they could be like 40 to 50 feet wide. The thing is, swim parallel. So if you feel yourself starting to get pulled out, which unfortunately we have stories all the time about people getting pulled out into the sea.
Yes.
And panicking and who knows how far you could go out with that. But if you swim sideways, that is what you're supposed to do.
Swim sideways out of the thing, relax. There's nothing pulling you down. This is a very natural process. Swim sideways. And in fact, surfers love these things. This is a free ride back out. You ride your wave, you come in, jump in a rip, it gives you a free ride back out. Same thing with kayakers who want to launch the surf. Oh, there's a rip. Let's go jump in that and ride the current out. So they're not sinister. They're just as natural as they can be. And I really invite people to get to know them and befriend them. And it's, the more you know about the beach, the more you're going to enjoy it.
Well, I want to recap some of these things too that you just said here about this, because I think this is really important. We do have, it is going to be nice weather this weekend, but people love going out to the coast, getting into the water, even if it is cold. If you had to list them out, what's the number one thing people should do for watching out for rip currents?
You know me, I want to keep people out of trouble in the first place. So yeah, last ditch, you swim sideways, but learn to spot these things. When you get down to the beach, just scan the beach. You'll be able to spot them very quickly and stay away from them. Keep your dogs out of them. Keep your kids out of them. Keep your uncle from Minnesota out of them, and relax into it. Enjoy it. It's a very natural process. There's nothing especially terrifying about them, and carry that knowledge forward. When somebody starts talking about an undertow, you might want to gently steer them in the right direction. That's not quite right.
So if you were to get pulled off your feet, say, and you're floating there in the water and it's pulling you out, Don't panic. Don't swim against it. Swim to the side.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. It's really good to think about this right now before somebody's in the middle of panicking as that's going on. So I feel like that's a good thing for everybody to know.
Yep. And there are a million YouTube videos about rip currents. Go to some of those, look at some of the lifeguard department videos. In no time at all, you'll be spotting these things, and they will have no sway over you.
All right. And undertow is not a thing.
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. That's funny. That is something I have heard my entire life about. Watch out for the undertow. So undertow, not a thing. Rip current is what we should be saying.
Absolutely. And don't call them riptides.
Don't call them riptides. Wait, then what's a riptide?
That is a misnomer for a rip current. That's like calling it the Willamette Valley in Oregon. It's just the wrong way to say it.
All right. Then we've settled. It is one term. That is what you use when identifying and calling these. It is a rip current. And Charles, anything else that you want to let people know about?
You know, I'm heading for the beach in a few minutes. I hope a lot of people do. The more you know, the more fun it is. Teach your kids, teach your neighbors, and treasure this resource we have. It is so cool out here. I can't even believe it. So have fun, everybody.
It is, and we've got several videos with Charles too, kind of going over different things to be aware of, how to stay safe when you're out on the water, whether that's at the beach, whether that's going on a river and a lake, just different ways to stay safe. And that's one of the most important things, because like you said, it's a lot of fun to go out and enjoy it, but you don't want to end up having some kind of an issue when there's something that's easily avoidable, and understanding what you're encountering, like a rip current and swimming sideways.
Exactly.
Now I know that. Now we all know that. Charles, thank you very much. Oh, and where can people find more information about you?
I am the ocean coach. I teach small boat captains how to go to sea safely and with confidence. You can find me at theoceancoach.com.
All right. Charles, thank you so much.
My pleasure, as always.
And for everybody who's joining us right now, again, appreciate you being here. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. We live stream every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Coming up here at 1:30 p.m., so whatever platform you're on, just come right back here. 1:30 p.m., we're going to be having another part of a series that we're doing, talking to nonprofits participating in the Oregon Charity Championship Golf Tournament. And this is going to be Project 48, and they help foster kids. So we're going to discuss everything that's going on with them. Brandy's going to be joining us from Project 48, so we'll find out more about how they help out the community, what they're looking for, what they can do, and maybe some ways that we can all help them as well. So that's coming up at 1:30. At 2 p.m., we've got the video version of the Fox 12 Oregon Weather Podcast. So that is going to be happening. We do that every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, so that's also coming up here on the show today. So I'm going to sign off for right now, but I'll be back at 1:30. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.